Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be your friendly dungeon master this evening. With me tonight is one of the regular fixtures from Wednesdays and Fridays, Jeffrey.
Hey, everybody.
So tonight we are, Jeff and I are going to be talking about the character that he's going to be playing in our upcoming 4th edition D&D campaign. We currently have scheduled the next session on Friday is going to be, or was scheduled to be our character creation session. But to be honest, the characters are coming together a lot sooner than I had thought. Brent seems to have a pretty solid idea of what he's going to be playing. Dave seems to have a solid idea of what he's playing. It sounds like you've got an idea of what you want to play too. So if I can get a word from Cork, what we might be able to do is just confirm everyone's stats come Friday, and then maybe start actually playing.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It would be pretty cool. So, but with that in mind, so Jeff and I have exchanged some emails too, and so then I appreciate your follow-up email to Jeff. That makes a lot more sense because I didn't think that you were going to, I should say for the listeners at home, what Jeff had come up with was a character that sounded, just from the way it was described, to be very much like an Indiana Jones character then applied to D&D. And what I had suggested is that because I thought that's what his approach was. It turns out that's not what he was thinking. It's just that with two different ideas that he had from two different sources, ended up coming together in a character that sounded an awful lot like Indiana Jones.
Right, and we both thought that, because my email, I mentioned it, and then you immediately thought the same thing. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that's not what you're doing, because just for the sake of the listeners at home, my concern with that is that if you come with a character that is too linked to a pre-existing fictional character, I think it's jarring. That playing that character becomes kind of straitjacketing because if you play the character differently than what people are expecting you to play, like if you play, I don't know, like Indy as a prude or whatever, then it feels weird rather than you playing your character. It feels like out of character actions rather than playing your character the way you just want to play your character.
Right, absolutely. No, and I agree with you. I don't think you ever want to base a character on a popular character, really, ever. Maybe just an aspect of the character, but to go wholeheartedly into a famous character like that is not a good idea.
No, I agree. So okay, cool. So the two. Why don't you tell us what the two sort of foci, I guess, that are the two sort of themes you were thinking of building the character around?
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who listened to our last discussion last Wednesday about Dungeons and Dragons, over the course of the conversation, Kevin had asked me what I liked about older versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and I had mentioned that I liked all the quirky, weird magic items. And I liked getting them. I liked adding them to my character, and all of a sudden having some strange thing that you never expected to have. A cloak of darkness or something, and now it defined your character a little bit. You'd be hiding in the shadows where you used to be this brash character, but it's like I found this powerful magic item that helps me achieve my goals. Of course, I'm going to use it. Like it would be like a real person. If you all of a sudden had a race car that magically let you drive like Mario Andretti, you might actually go into some race car driving even though you've never been into it before.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think there will be plenty of opportunities in this. And then playing up, I think so. What you were tying that to was the idea of being like a treasure seeker type character,
right? Like just incorporating that into my character is making him a treasure seeker, making him someone who's interested in these old magic items that are littered around the world, that are, hidden in destroyed castles or, been looted by monsters or whatever, and like going out and finding them and basically putting them back into use in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's that will fit really well, I think, with the campaign. Since we since we had our conversation last Friday, like after running that Dead by Dawn session, and then doing some campaign prep and hearing what other people are thinking about playing, I've like the world has crystallized a lot better for me. And the reason I started sending more stuff is because I realized that creating characters in the vacuum isn't really, it's cool to give lots of options, but to not give any kind of structure to what the campaign is going to look like can end up with very, very, different ideas. So I wanted to give you guys a little more like, here's where I'm coming from this. And really what I want to embrace is the what D&D 4th tried to push as its take on the D&D world, which is the points of light kind of approach, where the world is a dark and scary place, and there are only a couple, there are a few bastions of civilizations that are points of light in an otherwise, dark and dangerous world, and that your adventurers are the brave ones who are going out and, going into that that darkness and getting adventures and whatever. And I'm using a modified version of the Nentier Vale setting, which is sort of ended up becoming, wasn't intended to be, but it kind of became the default setting for 4th edition. Yeah. And to do some of it, because I want to have a world that was built around 4th edition, and I like the setup. I really like the setup for it, where like the last great empire collapsed 100 years ago, and in the wake of that, like I'm a big history nerd, and I got my minors in history, and I was a history major until I realized I couldn't do anything with that degree. So I got a slightly less useful degree, or slightly marginally more useful degree in poli-sci, but I still was a history minor. But for Western Civ, the discussion of or the description of the collapse of the Roman Empire as being, the lights across Europe all going out suddenly in one night, is sort of is what I'm picturing, that this is what you're, 100 years ago, the Empire of Narath it collapsed. It was finally overwhelmed. It wasn't it had been dying for a long time, but then the combination of civil strife inside and the external pressures of these demonic gnoll hordes just led to a collapse. And that means, no maintaining the roads, no maintaining the aqueducts, no maintaining the, the communication, no maintaining the safety of travel between things. So a world that used to be really integrated and really cosmopolitan suddenly is gone, and you guys are 4 generations after that. So you can imagine, and then throughout the history of the setting as well, too, there's a bunch of other empires who've gone through similar things where they, at a time they were the most powerful and most influential empire around, and then that passes, right? You think of the Pierce Bysshe Shelley poem, the Ozymandias poem, right? Where it talks about the there's a pair of trunkless legs standing. And do you know the poem, Jeff?
No, I don't know that poem.
Oh, okay. Give me a sec here. I've got actually there's a way better one where Bryan Cranston is reading it. Is the penultimate episode of Breaking Bad was called Ozymandias.
Oh yeah. Okay, well I've seen that episode, so. Okay,
so this is what I was playing. So the poem is, I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survived, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed them. And on the pedestal, these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I love the idea of the... I actually read that poem for the first time when I was like 12, I think, because I was at a gaming convention and someone had named a painting that they did, Ozymandias, and I had no idea what that was, so I looked at the poem, and I just love that because it gives the idea of, that everything, nothing has permanence, that everything has a time, and that if you scratch beneath the surface, there is this rich history, that was as vital and as complex as what we live in, right? And That's what I want. I'm hoping to do in this one is that you guys are starting off. I actually really, really love that we're using a custom world here because no one can bring any pre-existing knowledge into this. You know,
right?
All you guys will be as ignorant about the wider world as what your characters are, and it'll make those you know, those history checks or you know whatever. It'll make them all the more important because, or if you play up your characters in a certain way, you know, to be academically minded, it will make it all the more important because you'll be the ones who will be able to provide some insight into the mystery that is the history of the region. So
should be good. And so the second aspect of the character that I came up with came from two places. The first place was Dave and Cork had both sort of decided to play leader characters, and Brent had already picked a striker. So I knew I was going to be playing a defender or controller.
Yep.
And so when I started looking through, well, basically after I knew that one of my favorite weapons to use in D&D campaigns that is good for both a defender and a controller is a whip. And so I thought, oh, that's a great strategic decision. Like, Brent's the king of min-maxing, but you know, I am Brent's apprentice when it comes to that, if you so to speak. And so I do sometimes try to min-max my characters a little bit too. And a whip is a good way to fit into either of those characters to help extend your spells, control the battlefield, do what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and it supports that kind of play really, really well. Like, you know, like,
right.
There's so many interesting options, and like, I mean, I'm not sure if you've taken a peek at the Magic Items books yet, Adventurers Vault or.
Just barely. I've just been busy reading all the other stuff.
Oh yeah, but it's crazy. Like, there's so many, because the Magic Items don't do necessarily big flashy things. They'll do like one sort of thing and one small modification, but it leaves you so many cool options for how to customize your character.
Right. I can't wait.
Okay,
and so wait, I just want to finish the story. And the other part of it was, I don't know if any, you know, listeners at home watch our episode that just me and Kevin did of Conan. But there was a scene in there where my character, I believe his name was Severus, which is the same name that someone else used in our other campaign. Yep. And he was beset by a group of wolves, and he basically used his chain. He was swinging it over his head and hitting the ground in front of the wolf himself, between him and the wolves, and causing big sparks. And then one of the wolves charged him, and he smacked it with the chain, and the blood flew, and then the chain got covered in blood, and he was swinging it over his head, and there was a sort of a circle of blood in the snow around him and the girl he was protecting, and it was just a great scene. And over the last little while, when me and Kevin have been talking other times about, you know, what's your favorite game or scene or whatever, and that was one that always stuck with me. And a chain is a very Conan weapon, and sort of the D&D version of that weapon is a whip. And so that was the other reason that I kind of wanted to use a whip, is because I only got to play that character a little bit, but I liked the chain aspect of that character. So I wanted to have more chance to play with a weapon like that. And so the two things I had were, you know, Treasure Seeker and, you know, wielding a whip. So when I sent Kevin the initial email, I meant to say, you know, what does this remind you of? But I sort of said, like, I worded it in such a way that it sounded like the inspiration for the character was that. Yeah. And so Kevin picked up on it, and of course, because we both do, I mean, treasure-seeking whip wielder is Indiana Jones for anyone of our age group, that's for sure. Yeah. And so there was a bit, like, that's when we got into the discussion of, you know, not making the character too much like Indiana Jones. And, you know, I just had to point out to Kev, like, well, it wasn't going to be Indiana Jones any more than those two things are a part of the character, so. Okay, I'm going to send you. I'm sure you'll see as we begin to make the character how he's not going to be anything like Indy. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sending you a link to something that I've been thinking of since you mentioned how much you liked the chain.
and that you're going to be an armored character as well too. So take a look at the image in the chat. Let me see.
Oh.
I'm actually.
Wait, where is it?
I will. I'll quickly share the image on the screen for the folks at home as well too. So this is. Oh, there we go. That's the image I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So what that is. Yeah, I can stop that now. So what that is it's called a Thunder Lasher. So in the early aughts, D&D released a miniature game, like a tabletop miniature game called Chainmail. That was was only out for about like maybe not even a year. I don't know, maybe about a year. And I got crazy big into that game. Like I have every mini that was produced for that line, even though it didn't last very long. But one of the factions you could play in that was this group called Mordengard, which was dwarves, and one of their characters, and they had sort of like not high tech like the goofy high tech that you think of like Tinker Gnomes or things like that. Like tech that was, I don't know, felt very dwarven. Like they had these like sort of like giant steampunk kind of, not steampunk, but like magical automatons that looked kind of steampunky, but more steampunky. They had a pulverizer and they had a hammerer, and they also had this what the Thunder Lasher did is he used this like Arcano tech, whip that was basically like it was like the what's his name, like Blacklash from Iron Man, like the guy with the like shocking whip he could use.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. So that's what got me thinking. I'm like, so I love the idea of the whip, and I think what I'm going to give you the option of is if you want to make it more, because like everything else about your character is really battle hardened, right? And the whip just a whip would not be effective against anything with a lot of armor. I mean, like mechanically, I'm not going to say it's going to change one way or the other, but like just narratively, it you can picture that like whipping an armored knight is going to have limited utility. So what I was thinking is if you like that chain idea, we could just call it a battle chain. And then what I'll do is either you can, it'll be an exotic weapon, which is like their version of like, it'll cost you a feat to do it, but you're getting a bonus feat to start with anyway. And what it will do is either like a whip is a +3 proficiency, 1d4 damage, and has reach. I think that what the battle chain will be is either +3 to hit, d6 damage and reach, or +2 to hit, d8 damage and reach, whichever your preference is.
Right. Yeah.
Does that fit with your idea of what your character was going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be cool, especially as a battle mind. Like a chain would be much more devastating, and I was thinking of sort of taking them down as much of the train as I would of being also an intimidating force in battle. Like, and so a chain is a very scary weapon to be fighting against.
Totally. Well, especially like as it, like as you advance, one of the cool things with Fourth is, so like if you've got an item that has some great like sentimental value to it, like it's inherited, your backstory is it's your father's sword or whatever else, you don't have to give that shit up just because you got some new magic item. What you can do is there are rituals in the game to transfer enchantments onto it.
Oh.
So that way you can keep using the cool shit that you've got and not have to be like, oh, I'm going to use whatever, whatever.
Right now I'm switching to a sword because I found a magic sword.
Yeah, and I want to quickly check one thing mechanically, because I want, if you were okay with that, here it is. So a whip counts as a flail. And
yeah, I saw that in the item categorization thing.
Yeah, and it's in. So one of the reasons I made Brent's one character from the one shot as a person who uses flails is because he was able to use. There was that neat feat that he could get, flail expertise. So what an expertise feat is, and that's what you're going to get for free. You're going to get a free expertise feat. It gives you +1 to hit with whatever whether it's an implement or a weapon or whatever. But then it also gives you some other neat ability that's unique to that kind of weapon or implement.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what the flail expertise does is, in addition to the +1 to hit, when you hit with a melee weapon attack that, and the attack lets you slide the target, you can knock it prone instead of sliding it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just so happens that a shit ton of your abilities are slides.
Right. Yeah. The battle mind does a lot of slides.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I thought.
So you can replace them with prone, knock prone. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you can picture that you're like, battering people to the ground, and it gives you an element of controller, because one of the things that will not happen is that because you're attacking at reach, you don't necessarily have to be adjacent to an enemy, but so I think it's called Mind Spike is the ability that you've got that when someone doesn't attack you, how you respond to it as a defender. But that requires you to be adjacent to them. This gives you something else to do to manage the battlefield, even at range.
Right. Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm like after reading the battle mind too, I'm also picturing that he's literally using his psychic energy or whatever to control the whip in the air. So like I think in combat a lot of times he's going to be like, I'll be explaining like impossible whip techniques where it's like, he'll whip it out and it'll look like it's going straight at the back of the head of one of his allies, and then the whip will turn like 90 degrees or whatever and hit the person beside them. Yeah. Because it's like the whip's actually making impossible paths or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. That's great. I guess we should say that the class you chose was Battle Mind out of the Player's Handbook 3.
Yeah.
Had you given thought to race?
I was considering playing something large.
Okay.
Like I know that little mini you had, there was a dwarf, but I was imagining him more as like an intimidating figure on the battlefield. So like maybe like something like a Goliath.
Goliath would be very cool. There's the Goliaths I'm picturing are there are mountains where the campaign is starting is in a city called Outlook, and Outlook is Overlook. Overlook is right near these the set of mountains whose name I can't remember right now, but it's got a significant dwarven presence there too, and the Goliaths kind of live in the same areas where the dwarves do. Where the dwarves, dig beneath, I picture the Goliaths kind of living on top. So it would definitely fit for you to be playing a Goliath. Other large size or sort of like big and tough races from this edition would include the half orc to a degree, the Minotaurs, the Goliaths, of course. I don't think there's anything in the first Player's Handbook. Gnolls as well, but Gnolls are kind of your guy would be an outcast in that case.
I don't want to be an outcast. I do think it's kind of fun, although not really important. But I actually like it when the party is a bunch of different races.
Yep. No, me too.
I actually find that more interesting. It's more interesting to like then travel to a land where, or like you've got to go somewhere and it's like the people here hate Goliaths, and it's like your character is now all of a sudden an outsider, or they worship elves, and all of a sudden, Brent's monk can't move around in the city because all the children are, crowding around him or whatever. It's just interesting, I think, when you have different races in the party.
No, and I agree, and I want because we're sort of creating this campaign, or the campaign world for this campaign. It gives you guys an opportunity to really put your stamp on whatever race that you want to play. Let me think here. So Goliath, what other big ones are there? Half dwarves are bigger than either humans or dwarves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because what they do is they take sort of like the best qualities from each of their parents. The sort of like the Dark Sun story, which I like a lot, is that they're very, very rare because it's a really difficult childbirth. So the ones that tend to survive, they have the sturdiness and the hardiness of their their dwarven what do you call it? Their dwarven parent, but they have the long limbs and the height of their human parent.
Oh, and that's what Brent was playing, right? They were called a mule?
Yeah, they call it a mule, yeah.
Which book would that be in?
That is in the Dark Sun book, but I think they've got, I can see here, this is the link. And just remember as well, too, like you can take whatever stat bonuses you want. I sent you a link to it. In it because it's, I want you guys to have an interesting story version for playing your characters. Or if if they're the other abilities, like Brenda's picked Elf for his, and I'll bet my life leg that he picked it because they've got a move of 7.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool. He also loves playing elves. I mean, it just that works out. That's a happy.
He does pick Elf very commonly.
Yeah, yeah. But whatever. I mean, I play the same character. I play a big tough guy in every campaign I ever play in. So, except for Sakan. Sakan was stepping outside my comfort zone, and I loved him. He was awesome. My little rat man.
Okay, so I think I'll pick maybe one of those two then, because I don't think I'll be a Minotaur if that's what Dave is.
Yep.
Thinking that he's going to be. So, yeah, I'll probably go Goliath or Mule or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
I'll probably just read through their book. I mean, well, the Goliaths are huge.
Yeah, they're really big, and I'm trying to remember what their special ability is. The racial ability.
Mountain tenacity. You have +1 racial bonus to will. Powerful athlete. When you make an athletics check to jump or climb, roll twice and use either result.
That's pretty good.
And Stone's endurance.
I should remember this because I'm playing a Goliath in James's campaign. He's a Goliath rune priest.
And the resistance from Stone's endurance, granting resist 10 to all damage for an additional turn after Stone's endurance ends. +5 to all damage until the end of your next turn.
Yeah.
Oh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's having like I played a Goliath from level 2 to level 5 so far, and it's pretty helpful. I'm playing a melee class, and I use it in every fight, and it's a helpful way to mitigate some of the damage coming in.
Yeah. Whereas a mule, I mean, they're both move 6, and like you said, I can put the ability scores wherever I want.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to what the mule's ability is that it's incredible toughness or something to that effect. At the start of the round, if you've got an ability that if there's ongoing damage that save would end, you can just automatically take it.
Right, yeah, I remember Brent used that.
Yeah. So it's really just a matter of they're very similar. Both of them suit or complement the defender class quite well. It just really comes down to which you think would fit better with your backstory, or what would be more interesting you think would to play. Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, like mechanically, the mule seems pretty great. You're tireless, so you only need 6 hours every 72-hour period instead of 24-hour period to gain the benefit of an extended rest.
If you want to link the races to your sort of like treasure seeking thing as well, like if it's not just that you are personally interested in going out and seeing things, if it's something to do with your heritage, the mule would be a better choice than the Goliath, because the Goliath are more like hunter-gatherer types.
Right. And I could play, rather than playing an average size Goliath, I could play a large mule.
Of course, yeah.
Like if presence is something I'm going for.
Yeah, like it really doesn't. It doesn't really matter. The stats, like you're gonna have a certain amount of points to buy your stats, and then you're gonna have get +2 to 2 of your stats, and that's not dictated by your race. You just pick those wherever you want.
Right.
So if you want to play a character who is a really strong and tough mule, which is saying something for mules, then fill your boots.
Right, like you don't care if I make him 6'4" or 6'5", and
no, not at all. No,
Okay.
he could be like I said, the guy who just gets the best qualities from two of his parents.
Right.
The reason I dig on the mule idea too is because Overlook is a very dwarven community, and a mule is more likely to be sort of a cast-off outcast, like a having to make it on his own type character. Than I mean, a Goliath can absolutely do that as well too, but there's a baked-in discrimination against mules.
Right.
Right, like they would not call themselves. They're not a race that breeds pure. They would not call themselves mules. They are, people who have one dwarf parent and one human parent.
Right.
It's the humans and the dwarves who, as long as you're out of earshot, would refer to you as a mule.
I like it. I think it would be fun.
Okay. Cool. And then.
So that's half of the decision, sort of.
Yeah. Well, did you give any thought to the theme that you were thinking?
So next you would pick theme, right?
Yeah. So the theme is.
So the theme is sort of. I kind of wanted to talk to you about these two parts of the character creation because I've never done this from scratch, and there's like 50 of them here or 100 of them here listed, and a lot of them don't have any link.
No, they're in. Most of them are in that issue of Dragon that I sent you guys, $3.99.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I included as a attached document a PDF copy of that just because it is.
Oh, it's in this. Okay, it's in this PDF. That was okay.
Yeah. Because
so this isn't something that's inherent to D&D 4th. Is this like an optional thing or what?
Yeah, and what it is what it does is okay. So at 11th level, you get to pick something called a Paragon Path, and what the Paragon Path does is gives you some extra skills or extra abilities that are a distinct flavor from what your class is or what your race is, and everyone picks one. What themes are is to serve two purposes. The Paragon Paths are really, really cool, and they do a great job of adding some extra flavor to your character without disrupting the advancement of your class. So it's kind of like a better incorporation or a smoother incorporation of the idea of prestige classes. The trouble is you got to be 11th level. You got to be playing a Paragon tier campaign in order for those to come into play, and those are pretty, Paragon tier characters are fairly complex. There's a lot of moving parts that you're tracking in those characters. So to try and allow heroic tier characters from 1 to 10 to be able to enjoy some of that same side flavoring, they introduce the idea of themes. The other thing they do is they give you an opportunity to add a little extra background flavor. All you end up with is usually one encounter ability that gives you another little trick to do in combat. The complaint that some people had was that at low levels, you blow through all your encounter abilities and then all you're doing is using at-wills. Now, I categorically reject that as being an argument against, because there is always interesting shit to do in combat, and it's a role-playing game. It's not a video game, so you can come up with cool and interesting things to be doing as well. For instance, I'm going to give you the on your character sheet when we fill it out for Roll20, I'm going to give you the rules for trick as well too. It's an optional maneuver, but that way you always have that as an available option, because I imagine with the battle chain you're going to want to try and use that sometimes. So with that complaint in mind, that's where they introduced this, is to also give you one extra encounter, and you get maybe, I think, 2 more encounters usually, or sometimes dailies, as you gain levels in that theme. And then the theme also gives you options that you can sub out. So let's say you get to 5th level and there isn't a power in your class that really jumps out at you. You can take one of the powers from your theme, one of the optional ones.
Okay.
So it's a cool way.
I see. So you get a starting feature.
Yep. And then usually one.
And then at certain levels, there's additional ones that are optional.
There's certain ones that are automatic. I think at 5th and at 9th you get automatic things. Maybe it's 10th.
Oh, okay, yeah. 5 and 10, yeah, I see that.
And then the optional ones are things that you can sub out. Like when you get an option to pick a new power, say at level, I don't know, 3 or whatever, level you're going to get a power where there is an alternate one available in your theme. You can choose to take the one from your theme instead of taking one of your other powers. Like as we get more familiar with the game too, you'll see that there are actually like your skills. If you're trained in a skill, there's also powers that you can learn at different levels that are specific to that. So it gives you a cool opportunity to have a character that draws from more sources than just your class. So the I guess what one way to think of it is, do you want to play picture a theme that complements what you've already got, or something that serves as an interesting contrast? Like for instance, in Brent's camp or in Brent's character, that was a contrast, right? I wanted to show him that you could play a tough defender type character who could also do some cool, oracle or oracular kind of things as well. That's some neat, weird, mystic powers. Corey's character was not played that way. Yours was played in a complementary way because Noble complemented a leader quite well. Right. So the other thing is, yeah. The other thing is,
you're just saying like a theme best for strikers and controllers.
Yeah, it suggests what it's best at, but don't feel bound. Again, that will just help you determine whether you want to have something complementary or if you want to find something that contrasts. I have for instance, my character in James's campaign, I am a leader, but I took a striker, like a striker controller class because I just thought it was really cool and I wanted my character to be able to do some of those things. He's a big Goliath guy who fights with a big fuck off hammer, and I took this the background Sohei, which is like a warrior monk, because I just thought the ability there was really cool, and I make use of that ability every fucking combat. It's an encounter thing that allows me, I think I get to knock someone to the ground maybe. But anyway, it's super useful, and it's usually my opening gambit, in a combat encounter.
Right.
So yes, I mean, like the other thing is, because I'm going to let you use your theme in your background to get skill bonuses too. If you are trained in this, if you're not trained in a skill, but you think your background or your theme might apply, you're going to get +5 to the roll, just as if you were trained in a skill. If you are trained in a skill and your theme or background plays in heavily, then you're going to get +2 to the roll. So that's the other thing I want to use those. I want to use them in addition to support the role playing part of the play as well. So any that sort of that even just the names of them sort of jump out at you?
Well, a lot of them are made up names. Gladiator might be interesting.
Gladiator is from the Dark Sun book, and
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Grab it 1 second.
Yeah.
So I've got these big, canvas bags that Sentry Box gave me because when I made big purchases, and I've just been tossing them aside because I'm not going to carry shit around with a big Sentry Box branding on it. But it just so happens that fitting all my 5th edition or 4th edition D&D stuff and the other stuff that I needed to pack my other gaming stuff fits perfectly well in those 4 bags.
Yeah, perfect.
So I've got this. Take a look. This is the. I've had these sitting here, ready to transport. I can just toss them in the back of the Jeep on Friday on moving day. Get them out there. So it also makes it really easy to reference the books. All the spines are up. Where's this theme? Okay, so Gladiator. Secondary role is Defender. So at the power you get is called Disrupting Advance. It is an attack versus AC against one target It does 2 times weapon damage plus your ability modifier, and you push the target 2 squares. The target and each enemy adjacent to the target at the end of the push are slowed until the end of your next turn. So you knock someone back, they crash into their allies, and it sort of like forces them to grab him and get him back up, and it slows them so they have a speed of 2.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
And I mean, it's another push. It's another cool push ability, which means I could also knock them prone.
No, because it's slide abilities that knock people prone.
Oh, it's slide.
Yeah, a push is directly away. A slide is any direction.
Oh, okay.
Let me see what you do with a battle mind though. What I might do is I can change the feat so that it affects on push rather than slide, because it looks like actually your abilities often push, not slide.
Yeah, that's just kind of what I was remembering, is that a lot of them push.
Sure, then we can just have the feat applies to push instead of slide. So that'd be cool then. So then, yeah, you could knock him, because that's what I did for Brent's character. Because he didn't have any abilities that slide people and they just push people, I just said, all right, the feat works for only pushes instead of slides. Let's see here, you get at level 2 an ability called Go with the Flow as a gladiator. An enemy within 5 squares of you that you can see moves willingly. You shift half your speed and you gain combat advantage against the target until the end of your next turn.
That's pretty cool as well.
That's a pretty great way of, especially with your reach. So, you know, even if you're shifting only half your speed, you're still going to, you know, as long as you're able to get yourself within 2 squares of them, you're going to be able to affect them with your abilities. It's cool too because they give in the Dark Sun one at least. They also give Paragon Pass that follow through from the theme, which is neat because you're not restricted. I mean, some of them are restricted, but you're not necessarily restricted to Paragon Pass only from your class. It's just that some of them only support abilities that you get from that class.
Right.
Any other ones jump out at you, or does Gladiator sound like the one?
Ghost of the Past.
That's what Corey's character was. Which issue of Dragon is it in?
430.
430. Give me a sec here.
It does say it's best for strikers and controllers, but it does sound interesting.
Yeah, it's because you're effectively kind of like from a lost time. That's why I gave Corey that elaborate backstory of having dissipated and then reformed, after centuries. So
right.
Abilities are is default ability is guidance from the past. You make an attack roll, skill check, or an ability check. Instead, you roll 2d20 for the triggering roll. And use either result. If you roll the same number on both dice after you complete the action related to the triggering action, you're dazed until the end of your next turn. You also gain training in history. And you add a language from your fallen empire to the languages you can speak, read, and write. At level 5, you can use guidance of the past. So roll 2 dice and keep whichever one you want. To make a history check each encounter without expending the power. And then at level 10, when you spend an action point to take an action that requires you to make an attack roll, a skill check, or an ability check, you can use your guidance of the past power with the action, even if you've already expended the power.
Oh, cool.
So that's pretty sweet.
Kind of interesting. It could lead to some interesting backstory.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it could... let me see here. Oh, I just close it off. There we go. Is that 20? Yeah,
are dwarves long lived in this version of Dungeons and Dragons?
They are not like elf long lived, but in grab the player's handbook. What do they see for life expectancy? Dwarves are actually super fucking cool in this. If for no other reason, is because they can use their second wind as a minor action. All right. Dwarves often live to see 200. So between they remain vigorous well past 150 years of age, often living to see 200.
Just thinking, because it might be interesting if, like, you know, my father or mother was a dwarf from maybe one of the civilizations that fell.
Sure. I mean, the dwarven civilization would have been ages and ages ago. But if Glad, well, no, you wouldn't be going Glad. You go with that from the past.
It's not 100 years ago. It's much longer.
Yeah, well, the dwarven one is much longer ago, but I mean, a mule's half human as well. So conceivably, you could have been someone from the time of Narath, that would have been your initial. This also would explain why you were sort of way out of your depth, and why you're sort of your link to your fellow adventurers is so strong, is because like when you were trapped or lost or whatever it was, I got a great fucking way of linking in. There's another thing I want to do with this campaign to explain the sort of blue haze thing, and I'm stealing it from Chad. Chad came up with a great idea for how to do it on his Isle of Dread campaign he's running, and I'm basically just stealing the idea. So like the Elsyr Vale, where you guys are starting, is a place of planar instability. Like the city of Overlook was founded shortly after the end of the Age of Change, which is when the dwarves threw off the shackles of their Titan and giant masters. Giants and primordial and Titans and other primordials have a very strong link to the elemental chaos in this campaign. So this whole region, for back to time immemorial, when it was when it was sort of solidified by the gods from the chaos created by the Titans, it left. There's lots of like bleeding kind of, not holes, but like there are, like I said, planar instabilities. So what I was thinking is, like, if you want to have your father dwarvish and your mother human, your father very well could have been from Overlook, because Overlook dates back to that long ago. It's been around for like way past when any living thing can remember, and predates probably most of the empires that I've mentioned. The Arcosian Empire of the Dragonborn, the Baal Tarath Empire of the Tieflings, certainly more so than Narath. So maybe even if you were from the time of Narath, and somehow in the Elsyr Vale you were, like trapped in this kind of an ethereal kind of pocket dimension, and then when you were released, you're like, oh, Overlook is still here, that's fine, but the whole rest of the world has fucking fallen apart.
Right.
Which might actually explain why you're a treasure seeker as well, because you may have some recollections of what was there. You're like, well, no, there was this was a kingdom. This was like in the Elsyr Vale up to 200 years ago. There was this was a kingdom called Restalor, and then Restalor collapsed before the collapse of the Empire of Narath. But that's probably partly because Narath couldn't support its client states the way that it used to. It was a weaker empire and blah blah blah. So depending on how far back you want to be from, if you were from the Empire of Narath, that gives you, so you're not so far in the past that like the whole world is fucked up, but it also gives you some interesting insight into what things were like.
Right. And I think that like his treasure seeking would be like, as a battle mind, he would know the warriors of the lands. Like, you know, like that would be what he would care about. Like, you know, this land, their great warrior, his name was this, and you know, he fought with this axe, or he wore this battle armor that made him invincible, or, you know, like, I would know their weapons and their, like, their warriors, like, because they would have been the people that I would have been, you know, before I was held in time, like, who I would have been seeking out to battle one day to show my prowess as a you know, like, I must defeat him one day.
You know what? Too, you have a sigil, and we'll talk with Brent about this on Friday. But your order, like the thing you were trained in, was sort of because I'm picturing because you were a mule, you're an outcast and whatever else, so you weren't able to get trained in, like, none of the dwarven clans would want to take you in and train you because that's just you're a freak. And the humans would maybe like they'd see you as a novelty and whatever. But the order of the battle mind that you were trained by, whatever order you want to make that, there is a specific symbol and a specific language that you learned through that. And I think one of the things that drew you and Brent's Brent's character together is that you recognize that the symbols that you each use, it's not the same symbol, but it's in the same language, and you don't know what language it is. So
that would be cool. Like, Brent's like sort of this vestige of at least something I can latch onto.
There's some kind of connection. I think that because what I'm sort of picturing is we might play it out in the first session. I'm undecided yet because I'm trying to already my plan for what we're kicking off with has changed. So I'm the adventure that I advertised to you guys as being the thing I want to run. That's going to happen, but there are a couple things I want to have happen beforehand to sort of set the ground for that, to set the campaign up. And what I was thinking is that, but I was thinking of trying to think of a way to link in. What I want to have is that within the Elseer Vale, there's something was going to happen to you guys in your opening session that was going to basically taint you. So there would be times when your characters may, like, unpredictably just fade into the ethereal plane. It's to explain why the player's not there and that we can just carry on, right? But with your backstory, if that's what you want to go with, that's why they're all tainted, because they went, and I think it may have been at Brent's prompting, like whatever they found themselves in wherever you were. It was like a completely decimated and abandoned watchtower or something like that, like the ruins of that. He finds something, and then somehow it breaks the seal of whatever was trapping you there, and as a result, it's tainted all of them too. So sometimes, you know, when you guys, you can unexpectedly just be, you know, disappear. You'd fall through a rift and disappear into the ethereal plane, and out of game reason, that's my explanation for why that player's character isn't there.
Right.
So we don't have to worry about, like, oh, well, what's the war story this time? You know, like, no, we're not doing that. We're carrying on with the story. That character's not there. It also explains why the player may not know what the hell happened.
Right.
That is great. Like, Chad's using that in his Isle of Dread campaign to explain stuff, because he just doesn't want to do the blue haze or like have someone else run them. He just does that. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that for my next campaign.
Yeah, totally. It works good. That's interesting. So that's a good backstory one. I like it. I do also like, I mean, Gladiator does work too.
Honestly,
I come up with a good story for that one too, like, because from what I read there, the mules are quite often slaves, and, you know, there's the classic trope of, right, slave getting to fight in an arena, you know, like, I'm tough, so my boss is putting me in fights or whatever, and that's what he's using to make money from me.
Yep. And
so that's where I got my gladiatory combat. And then one day in the ring, the because you're so supposed to build like a history of where your battle mind powers came to be.
Yep.
And sort of in a fight in a gladiator pit would be an interesting place to all of a sudden, have that power show up. And basically, once it did, then my slave master just couldn't hold me anymore. I just, I became too powerful.
And that could have been why you were brought into that order. Then they could have recognized that, like, kind of been watching for that. Psionics are not unknown in this world, but they are unusual. Like, they're not. I don't think that the common folk would make a difference between a scion or something like that doing some magic, something, and a wizard doing something. They made us think it's the same thing.
Right.
Those in the know would know there's a distinction.
So either one works interestingly for the campaign.
If you and if you want to, like, I'm happy to have those ideas combined. If you like mechanically the gladiator idea better, I'm fine with you being a gladiator from Narath, because remember that you can use your theme to supplement your to supplement your role-playing rolls, dice rolls. So
right.
And you could just
right. So we could kind of create our own theme.
Yep, absolutely.
And be a gladiator out of time.
You also have your background, and what the background gives you is either there's a list of a ton of backgrounds if you want to use them for brainstorming. There is a good, I think I sent you guys a link for the Scales of War background campaign, and they're actually a little more interesting just because they give you more than just the basics. Let me see if I can find them here. What a background normally does, it gives you +2 to a skill check, or it gives you makes it one of your class skills, so you can pick it from one of your skill picks from your class, or it gives you a new language. So you could, in theory, just take +2 to history, or you could set it as your history. There we go. Set it as your history. Let's see here. Skills of War, is that right? Yes, okay. You could just set it as history as your thing. Here's a link I'm sending you for the Scales of War one. These ones I like a little better, only because they give you more than just a flat bonus. And they're a little more evocative, I think, too.
Right.
So let's see here. Okay. Yeah, these are actually a lot better than just the default backgrounds. I don't know. None of these are jumping out. Oh, here we go. Scion of an Ancient Bloodline. Add history to class skill list and gain +3 bonus to history checks.
That's kind of interesting for sure.
That could just, we don't have to call it Scion. You could just be the outcast from an ancient empire instead. Right.
And then that would sort of fit with the gladiator out of time idea.
Yeah.
Of why he's sort of got this improved history check.
Yep. Yep. It's not that you're necessarily trained in that. It's just that you remember the empire. And as a gladiator, maybe you traveled quite a bit too. So that could explain why you know these different places. And you just ended up gravitating to Outlook because it was, or Overlook because it was, well, I don't know. Maybe like those. That's where your ancestors are from. I don't know.
Maybe.
That when your ancestors is from there, and that the dwarves are more likely to maintain their history. And the Overlook really isn't significantly changed since the time of the Empire of Narath. So it would be a sense of stability, whereas like the rest of Narath is kind of a disaster. There are cities that have survived, but like they're not the. You would be constantly reminded of what was lost in the intervening time. And in any event, I think that Overlook is actually closest to the Elsevier Vale. So when you were rescued by the guys, you that would be the closest place, and you're kind of living hand to mouth right now. They're not a charity, so you got your weapons, you got your ability, you got your your gear, but you've really been having to work as a mercenary or as an adventurer, trying to make ends meet since. So does that, as a background, interest you?
Yeah, I mean, that's starting to come together. I like it.
It's awesome. You're okay. And sign of ancient empire. That's really cool. Okay.
I mean, really, we're at the point where it's like start rolling stats and giving them a name and stuff. So we could leave that for next Friday, I guess, unless you want to do that.
It's up to you. I mean, to be honest, the characters sound like, I don't doubt that Brent has a character put together. I've told him not to do that, but
right.
What are you gonna do?
He's funny that way.
Yeah.
So what kind of? Well, you could just give me some more advice too. Like, what about mule names? Like, what kind of names do you use for mules?
They can be whatever they want. I think that because they're mixed race, they could be take a human name or they could take a dwarvish name. What do you think? Like, were you sold like as a child into slavery, or like how did you end up becoming a gladiator or a slave gladiator? Did your mom, again, like mothers dying giving birth is not unusual for mules?
Yeah, I think my mother. Yeah, I like that. I think my mother died, and I was living with my father, and it just got to the point where the dwarven community just wouldn't accept me, and he was basically forced to sell me away.
Okay.
Because he couldn't, he couldn't leave the rest of his clan or whatever. Like it was sort of me and him, or him and the rest of his family, and he made a decision. He maybe regretted it, but
was it are you the product of a loving relationship, or was it like a kind of hookup thing, or?
I think it was a loving relationship. I don't think it was a.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So then, and depending on how much time you want to have passed, conceivably your father could be still alive.
Right.
It's only been 100 years since Narath fell. If you even give you like, if you were
right, he could be an old man.
Yep, because dwarves live into their 200s. So
I just have no idea what's become of him because of the time frame.
Yeah. Or where he's gone. So, which would be cool because I kind of I'm no one is none of the, I'm trying to make sure that none of the other characters are coming to the table with some other agenda in their backstory. I'm making sure that you guys have nothing. I want a good backstory, but like Brent's tribe has been annihilated. There was some artifact that they kept that was stolen. So he really has nowhere else to go. He could have gone and lived with, I guess, some other elven tribes, but maybe he was seen as a pariah or like
and my character would have felt betrayed by his father and isn't necessarily actively seeking him. Whether he's alive or not, then, Yeah,
I love that. Okay. So then, with that in mind, then do you think that you would have been named after by your mother, about her people, or by after your father's people?
I think I had a dwarven name. My father tried to, as hard as he could, fit me into the dwarven society. Like he really tried hard. He didn't sell me into slavery until I was quite a teen or a young maybe when I was really young, it was harder to tell the difference between me and the other dwarven children. And it wasn't until I really hit my growth spurt that I became so much larger than the other kids that it became very obvious.
Okay, I'm going to type in some of the suggested dwarf names from the Player's Handbook. But feel free to grab anything from, like, you know, Pathfinder, or like really anything, any kind of dwarven name you want. I don't have a set, you know, way of naming dwarves in this campaign in mind.
Right. Well, I like Thoradin.
So those are the ones just from the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, let's just go with Thoradin.
Thoradin? Awesome. Okay.
And then I'm sure he's got some kind of dwarven last name. Do they use their clan name or something? Or
I don't think that you've got the clan name. The clan name wouldn't allow you to do that. You can call yourself by that.
They stripped it of me. Sure, I like that.
Yeah.
He only goes with one name.
Yeah. Or alternatively, there's a name that they you know, like Hollowhammer, or you know, I'm trying to think of something to do with slag, so like some kind of like cast off name, right?
Right.
There would be a clan that is just sort of like the outcast version of dwarven society. So you could be like
right.
Like Slag Trail, or I'm trying to think of like something that would be like sound metally and whatever else, but would have no value.
Yeah, maybe I'll think about that a little bit.
Yeah. So it could be like Hollow Forge, or, you know, Cold Forge.
Right. Or like broken something.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like broken hand.
Cracked anvil, or cracked hammer, or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so
but he never uses it.
I think that the battle chain is a dwarven weapon. It's a traditional dwarven weapon that you've specifically repurposed as sort of a maybe either as a point of pride or as a fuck you to dwarves.
Right. So it's the kind of thing where like you never see a tall person using it. It's like used by little dwarves to like trip people and stuff. And now here I am, like a giant 6'5" type character swinging this thing in people's faces. So it's
if you picture everyone being sort of, you know, like a phalanx of dwarven enemies, right? Like that would be a great weapon to just pacham, you know, like over everyone's head.
Yeah.
Because you'd be those would be connecting at sort of like at the height of you know, humans and whatnot. Okay, cool. That's you've got to
coming along pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's see here. I guess the next thing to consider is what type of battle mind you would want to play, because that will dictate what attributes are most important to you. And
oh, right. There's two different ones, right?
I think there's three actually, because there's one from Psionic Power as well too. So let me
open the book.
The Psionic Power has one as well. I know. Oh, actually, the Dark Sun book has one as well. But let's see here. I'm going to see if it's on the.
I don't think you sent us the Dark Sun book.
Let me take a look here. Okay, I've got them all saved. Oh, yeah, okay. Eberron, Divine Power. No, I did. I think I did. Hold on, I'll do that right now. That way you got the full rules for Gladiator as well too.
Yeah, maybe it would help to. Maybe I should read through them before I pick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even like depending on where everyone else is with their character, I could be pretty far ahead. So. Yeah,
and I think everyone. Well, I mean, Corey's the needs to make his character still. Like
Corey had a pretty good idea what he wanted to play, and so did Dave.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dave has got a crystal clear idea of what he wants to play. Corey, I think he was thinking maybe Bard. I think when we were talking to him on Friday, but I'm not sure if he's got a class or whatever in mind. Yeah, it's just attaching to an email. Yeah, so that'll be so there's in Psionic Power there's another build, and then in Dark Sun there's another build as well. Let me see here.
Well, I think the two I've seen are, one is very quick.
Yep.
And the other is very tough.
Okay, here we go.
So one of them they both had great abilities. One, you could increase your toughness or your damage resistance.
Yeah, so the ones out of the core book.
The other one let you right after rolling initiative shift a bunch of squares right into combat.
That's a speed of thought ability. That's the quick battle mind. So the other version out of Dark Sun is, where is it? It's the wild battle mind, and what he does.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Wild focus ability. An enemy starts its first turn during the encounter it's an enemy within 10 of you. You pull the target a number of squares equal to your charisma modifier and mark it until the end of your next turn. So you start, instead of the speed of thought, like shifting forward, instead you draw an enemy towards you.
Right. Now I think it's going to matter how much, whether Dave and Cork are both healers. Then it might be better to get us some, something like the Quick Mind or whatever. Whereas, if Corey's more of a bard and he's got a little tiny bit of healing, but he's, other things as well, and Dave's a war priest, and so he's got some healing but also some combat, then I might be best to choose the defensive one if I'm really going to be drawing a lot of fire to myself.
You can picture if Dave is playing a rune priest, he's a melee class. He'll be up close and personal with you. So here's Psionic Power.
Right, so that's what I'm getting at, is that I might be best off to take the defensive one. I can't remember what it's called.
Okay, so the last one is the Harrier Battle Mind, and what the ability is when an enemy hits or misses you with an attack for the first time during an encounter, you can attack the target with this melee attack, even if the target's is outside of your melee reach. It's attack versus AC, and it does 1 weapon damage, and you teleport to a square adjacent to the enemy.
Oh, excuse me.
So that's when, so basically, when an enemy attacks you, hits or misses you with an attack for the first time during an encounter, you basically get to immediately counterattack for weapon damage, and then you teleport to be next to them, to a square adjacent to them.
And so what was the one where you became tougher?
That is Battle Resilience. An attack hits or misses you for the first time during an encounter. Until the end of your next turn, you gain resistance to all damage equal to 3 plus your Wisdom modifier. So it depends on whether you want your Wisdom to be the most important stat or your Charisma, I think. It sounds like the other ones seem to rely on Charisma.
Yeah, definitely the Quick Mind one is Charisma.
Yeah, okay. The Wild Mind one was Charisma as well. Let's see what Harrier is. Harrier is Constitution, which is your That's your prime requisite anyway.
I think this one's a tough choice.
It is. This is one of the things I love about it is that there's so many great choices for each of the classes.
Yeah. I really like the idea of both of them.
You know, one thing I say too is that I'm allowing you guys to rework your characters at each level. So like, because I want you guys to try shit out, and if you decide like, oh, this isn't working, I want you to be able to rework your powers and your feats, and I'll even let you take your, like, you can't change classes, but you can change your class feature if you want. For a battle mind, it's really not that important because there's not a huge, apart from the power you get, there's not a really big difference between the different types of battle minds. I guess your stat focus is the important thing there, but.
Yeah, I think I'll go with the resilient one.
Okay. That's cool. So there are at-wills in Psionic Power and in Player's Handbook 3.
The base book?
Yeah. And then I'm trying to see, let me take a look on the website here. Are there links to them on here? No, very few of the Battlemind at-wills are on the wiki. So that'll be your best. Yeah, there's one new at-will in the Dark Sun book too called Concussive Spike, and I don't remember what that does.
Like a level 1 one?
Yeah, it's an at-will. So level 1 at-will. And that one does.
Well, we get at-wills.
Yeah, so you'll get 2 at-wills. What you have to pick for first level is so you're going to get a free expertise feat, and then you get 1 other feat. But I think you're going to need to put the other feat into exotic weapon proficiency, which is your battle chain. Okay. So that's cool. I mean, like, you really, the only things you need to pick are your at-will powers and your daily powers. One of the neat things with the Battle Mind is that Battle Mind doesn't get any encounters.
Okay, so I get 2 at-wills and 1 daily. Is that how it works?
That's right, yeah. First level from all those.
Yeah.
So like the suggested ones are Iron Fist and Bull Strength. Bull Strength is pretty badass. That's the one that pushes people back.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that one also you can augment. So the way a battle mind works is you have a pool of power points that regenerate when you take a short or an extended rest. And you can choose to dump those to augment your at-wills. So for 1 point, and you have 2 to start with at first level, 1 point you can extend the reach of your bull strength by 1, which combined with your power means up to 3 squares away.
And so does that mean that lasts for 1 use?
Yes, just the 1 use. It's effectively like an encounter. Like, that's why you don't get encounter powers. Is because you've got the flexibility of, like, what you can do is you can also put 2 points into that, and then what that would, for the bull strength, what that would do is if you use 2 power psychic point, what are they called, power points or psychic points? Power points. If you use 2 power points on that, then the bull strength becomes a blast 3, which means you affect like a 3x3 square worth of people.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So is there any way to gain more power points?
As you gain levels.
Okay.
Yep. So when you gain
levels, no like PowerPoint focused version of the character, or
no, there's not. The game is very, very, very focused on balance. So there's not the kind of thing you see in Pathfinder where you can get like extra uses out of stuff with a feat or whatever. What you can get is the game is about expanding out rather than up with your feats.
Right. Well, just because I noticed that some of the cool magic items that were psionic based also had augment powers.
Yes. So you can use your psionic items to fuel you can use your power points to get extra shit out of magic items that non-psychics can't.
Right.
That's pretty cool, and I like you're actually like Brent's character technically has the psionic power source as well, but he doesn't have any power points. So I can tell you that like one of my plans is, now that I've got at least one of you guys playing a psychic character, is there may be other uses of your psionic power in outside of combat as well that you can use.
And make cool.
So so Bull Strength does that thing where you push people back. Iron Fist, you gain resilience equal to. Oh, that's pretty cool. So until the end of your next turn, you gain resistance to all damage equal to your Wisdom modifier, and you can juice that up as well. So basically, if you and that actually is an effect, which means it's not effect on a hit. That means if you use Iron Fist as your at-will power, as your standard action, you'll gain resistance equal to your will modifier regardless of whether you hit or miss.
Right.
Or Wisdom modifier, sorry, not will. But yeah, no, there's some really neat abilities. What else? That's kind of it for now. I mean, we need to in the Player's Handbook, the Player's Handbook 1, on page. There we go. Page starting on 17. This is the ability score, and what I'm going to let you guys do is use customizing scores, method 2. So you
also didn't send us the first book.
The first book? No, it is. It's just called something different.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, well, it's called like D&D 4th Core or something like that. Some of them are just the PDFs have different names. Let me my 4th edition. Oh, is that it? No. All right, it is. Okay, so there's the second email I sent had all the
books in it.
All the powers books in it.
Yeah, the second one had Arcane Power, Eberron Player's Guide, D&D 4th Edition Supplement, Forgotten Realms Player's Guide, D&D 4th Edition Supplement, Martial Powers, Divine Power, Heroes of Shadow, Heroes of the Elemental Chaos, Martial Powers 2, Primal Powers, Psionic Powers, D&D 4th Edition, Book 3, D&D Essentials, Heroes of the Fallen Lands, and Heroes of the Forgotten Kingdoms.
Oh, did I not? Hold up. Let me correct it. I guess I didn't send Player's Handbook 2 then either.
Yeah, sorry, it does have Player's Handbook 2.
It does have Player's Handbook, so just the first Player's Handbook was missing?
Yeah.
Okay, hold up.
I don't know. It didn't. It's weird. It didn't list it there, but it is here.
Sorry, the Player's Handbook. It's not listed, but Player's Handbook is there.
Oh, for some reason, the list at the bottom of the email shows 13, but the first one is the Player's Handbook 2. There's actually 14 attachments.
Okay, but you're sure the Player's Handbook is not included in that? The first one.
Here, Player's Handbook 1 is not.
Is not, okay. There we go.
Yeah, I didn't know when you sent it. I thought maybe Player's Handbook 2 replaced Player's Handbook, and that's why.
Oh, sorry, that was just my own fault. So it's attaching now. I thought yeah. This is what happens when you're trying to because I started on that project when it was kind of late. I just kept going, and I must have not been paying attention. Let me know if there's other shit that is missing from there. I've got copies of all.
These are the only two I knew about because it mentioned Dark Sun a few times on the wiki, and I'm like, oh, I don't have the Dark Sun book. So then I thought maybe you didn't want us to use stuff from Dark Sun because it's very specific.
No, it's not that at all. It's just the I don't know. I mean, I think I thought that because the stuff was fairly the themes. Some of them could be very, very campaign specific. I didn't think that it would be it'd be worth including, but no, I like.
Okay, well, you could just continue telling me what it says real quick.
Sure. So what the Player's Handbook? Where is it here? So you will have 20.
Like it's the typical start at 10. Everything has a cost.
It's a little different. One starts at 8, and then the rest start at 10, and then you have 22 points to spend on improving them, and they've got the table there.
Right, and like 10, like 11 and 12 are 1 point each. 12 and 13 are 2 points each. Like 12, that.
Well, it's so like 11 is 1, 12 is 2, 13 is 3, 14 is 5, 15 is 7, 16 is 9, 17 is 12, and 18 is 16. So like if you want to start with a 20 in your prime requisite, it means that there's gonna be at least 2 attributes that will be subpar. Right. But one of the ways that the game gets around the requirement to having so you don't like have shitty defenses just because you've got a low stat in one thing. Your defenses are all picked between 2 different stats. So like your AC and your reflexes are based on either your intellect or your intelligence or your dexterity, whichever one's higher. Your fortitude is based on your strength or your constitution, whichever's higher. And your will is based on your charisma or your wisdom, whichever's higher.
Right.
And then you also add 1 half your level rounding down to that.
So if I remember correctly, for the character I want to play, they say make Constitution high, then Wisdom, and then Charisma. Yeah,
and then you'll be able to add, like I said, +2 to any of those, any 2 of those, because you can. I'm not fussed about the racial bonuses.
Right, and those apply after you put the points in there.
Yeah, I could do it. I just could have just done this. Oops. Getting posts from almost done anyway. Just realizing that for the 8 attribute, like if you want to raise the 8 up, it costs you 1 to go to 9 and then 2 to go to 10. But for the rest of them, it costs the different amount. Basically, what you can do is, let me think here. Corey's character was the only one that I built that took a 20 in something, because I wanted him to have a really good. Sorry.
Right, and I think with 3 stats that matter, I definitely won't be picking a 20.
Yeah, so probably what you'll want to do is take 16 in something, and then like I think it's like 16, 14, 14, 12, 11, and 10 is I think what you end up with as your abilities. Is what you can afford. Let me do the quick math on that. So it costs you 9 to get 16, which you would then add +2 from your modifier. Costs you 5 to get a 14, which you would make 16 with your modifier. So it puts
you. One thing I've never liked about Dungeons and Dragons, kind of in a way, is just the fact that you have to only get a bonus at all the even numbers. Like, it makes the odd numbers weird.
In this, it's a little better because at level 4, I think it's 4, 8, 12, and whatever, you gain +1 to all your attributes. So all your attributes will go up at level 4, level 8, level 11, level 14, level 18, level 21, level 24, level 28. So it makes those even if your odd numbers aren't great right now, it's going to get better come time if you're patient.
Oh, so wait, at level 4 it goes +1?
Yeah, it says like in the first player's handbook it says you get to pick 2, but they change that in the essentials version, and I like that one better. So just come level 4, level 8, you will get +1 to all of your attributes.
Cool.
So like that gives some reason to, like, if the math worked better for you to start at like, you know, an 11 and a 15 or 11 and a 13 and whatever else on your attributes, and you were okay with waiting for those stat bonuses to kick in, when you hit 4th level, you would, you know, all those would bump up by 1, which would make it, you know, and then it also means that when you get that +1 for attributes that are at even numbers, you're just getting an incremental advance. You have to wait till level 8 for the next big kick to come in.
Right. Right, and I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, I almost wish that the way that they had done D&D was the even numbers gave you, I don't know, like the same bonuses that they did, but like 17 did something just, I don't know, whatever it would be, like to the stat of dexterity, it gave you +1 to all your skill checks or something for dex. Like previous to giving you the bonus, like, so like maybe 17 gave you the bonus to skills, and then 18 gave you the bonus to your modifier that like applied to all the other things, or something, just to make it not so even number focused.
Yeah, I guess the difficulty is then you're, I don't know, it's a legacy of really of I mean, I think basic, to be honest, because basic is where they first introduced that regimented, you know, +1 at level at 12, +2 at 14, and whatever. And
right. Like, no, I'm saying it's been in D&D the whole time, and I'm just saying it's one of the basic structure elements of the game that I don't really like.
No, this is where I like it for this one, because it means that unless you've designed a character specifically to have only even numbers or only odd numbers, it means that every time you hit, you know, 4th, 8th, whatever in this edition, you're getting something out of it. That's still a meaningful, you know, it's not a wasted advancement.
Right, you're actually almost best to try and design your character so that half your numbers are odd and half of them are even.
Yeah, for the ones that don't matter, I think that's. I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, like, there's 2 ways of looking at it. It's whether you want the immediate gratification of that bonus, or do you want to wait for that bonus until level 4? You're going to get it one way or the other. It's just that when you know, it's whether you want to start with it. Like, I would still want to, you know, start with the even number bonuses for the things that are important. But it's cool that, you know, like, if I've got a 13 in something, that I'm going to be getting that sweet +1, you know, when I hit 4th level.
Right.
It means that those design decisions at early levels aren't wasted. You know, it's not a dead stat that's going to sit there forever.
Well, so wait, are there 6 stats?
Yep.
So basically, I'm probably best off to make my Constitution, my Wisdom, and my Charisma even numbers.
Yes.
And I might as well leave my Strength, my Dexterity, and my Intellect odd, maybe.
Yeah, like, I think if for your dump stat, not to play to the stereotype, but probably Dex would be a good dump stat for you, because you only get to add your intelligence or Dex modifier to your armor class if you're wearing, I think it's like leather armor, and that's it, like light armor, and you're a character who's gonna be wearing heavier armor.
Right.
So your Dex isn't really gonna matter. I think the penalty will. I don't remember if the penalty counts or not. I don't think so. I think the penalty only counts to your skills, and like Dex skills are things like acrobatics and things like that. So, or acrobatics, stealth, thievery, things that your character's probably not going to, you wouldn't expect them to be good at anyway.
Right. I mean, intellect's an interesting one too.
Yeah.
I always like the interesting counter between having a low intelligence and a high wisdom.
Yeah. It's the common sense character.
Yeah, I always like those characters. They're interesting to role play.
Well, and your wisdom will be, let me think here. You got a high charisma. Oh, 2 of your highest abilities are going to be wisdom or charisma, which means that your reflex save may suck. Because if Dex is your dump stat and wisdom is intellect is a like a tertiary stat for you, that's what you use to determine your your reflexes.
Right.
But that's, I mean, whatever. Like, characters are going to have something that's they're not going to be as strong in. Your fortitude save is going to be fucking crazy. Your starting hit points are going to be bananas too. Like I think that Battle Mind has the highest starting pool. It's either them or Paladins, because your starting hit points are a set amount plus your Constitution score. So
yeah, I think it's like 15 plus your con score.
I think yours is it 15 or 16 for you?
Somewhere one of the two.
Yeah, it's up there. I thought it was 16, but
still, plus your con score. So
that's crazy though.
If that's the one I take an 18 in, I mean that's 33 hit points at first level.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's basically like the best hit points that any of us had when, what were we, second level in that adventure?
You're second level, yeah. You will have, I think you've got equal hit points to what Ketchak may have had, and you've got an equal amount of healing surges. You'd have 13 healing surges per day. So that would be pretty tough.
That's cool. I want him to be really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want him, you know, I mean, that's his role, right? He's drawing all the attention if possible.
Totally. And that's one of the things that I think is easy to miss in this edition is that those high defenses really fucking matter, because everything is sort of at parity and then up a little bit or down a little bit. That when you've got an AC, like an AC that is, you know, 4 or 5 higher than what your allies are, that's a huge difference. Like, Steve played a paladin in our Drow campaign, and he really did a good job of stacking all his defenses, so he was fucking impossible to hit with AC. Like, there were other ways to get past his defenses, but his AC was so fucking high that it was like I had a really hard time affecting him. There's a lot of like, well, and then this missed and affected you, or I would just use attacks that targeted like reflex or something else.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like, you think of the amount of times where Brent's character was not hit in Friday session, and I guess it's hard to remember a negative, but you know, like, Brent wasn't touched almost that entire first fight, and that's because his defenses were so fucking high. Right. So your character will be
especially something like a minion has a much harder time hitting you.
Not necessarily. It's just that minions don't do a lot of damage. And they don't have versatility in their attacks. Like one of the neat things is that monsters have a lot of different like tricks in their bag, so they can try different things. What I should have been doing with my minions against him is, instead of trying to hit him with their like claw attack, is to use their grappling attack, which targeted his reflexes.
Right. Cool. Well, I think that like before I can go much farther, I'm gonna have to read a few more rules and figure some numbers out.
Cool.
But I think it's a pretty solid start for the character.
It absolutely is. I mean, like, really, the only things you need to do is assign your attributes, pick your skills, and pick your powers. If you do that, well, whenever you do that, shoot me an email, and I can actually I'll upload everything onto Roll20.
Cool.
I'm just going to use the same campaign that we have set up already, because everyone's already joined that one.
So, right. It makes sense to just put the characters in there.
Yeah, and I'm going to put together for our characters, I'm also putting together the same kind of sheets that I did before. So we'll have character sheets and we'll have the Roll20 thing.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so I think it'll be, because those, I think, Corey said he didn't use his, but I think if he had used his, it would have helped him, because when I watched it a second time, he was the only one asking about his powers.
Right.
So I think it helped you guys.
I found it very useful.
Yeah, and I mean, like, oh man, I had so much fun running that on Friday. Like, I went back and rewatched it again, and that, like, the game went exactly the way I had intended. You know,
that's always feels good.
It feels so good, and like, it's when you get out of a session exactly what you were hoping for, and that's like I said, wasn't kidding when I said, like, that was an adventure that I've been waiting for about 7 or 7.5 years to run. Like, when I read it when it first came out on Dragon, I was like, oh, it's gonna be so cool. But all my characters at the time were higher level, and I couldn't work it in. So I had it as sort of a backlog adventure that I was gonna use when I had an opportunity, and then we got away from fourth. But it didn't have. I actually added the dragon in. I took out the existing final encounter and added the dragon in instead because I wanted you guys to see how cool it is to fight a solo in that edition.
Oh yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and it's, I think once you guys, like with these characters as well, I think you guys will do a much better job of, especially as we play more, right? Like you will just figure out ways to synergize the characters together to make best tactical use of each other. Like with Brent's character dancing around the battlefield, and you and Dave's characters working side by side, and then whatever Steve plays and whatever Corey plays.
Yeah, exactly. Like a one shot like that, it's hard to have as good of party synergy as you end up with if you grow these characters up through a few sessions together.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting really, really excited about and actually I'm glad that we've got this lost in time kind of thing, because that means I'm not going to spend I'm not spending any part of the first session working on that. We've got you guys together. We've got the baked in reason for why why there's the fade that happens sometimes.
Right.
Because that's great. James actually contacted me and said he wants to jump in.
Really?
Yeah, like I said, I sent him a link to the video for it. And I was like, hey, like just so we're playing some 4th edition. If you want to see the session, here you go. Hope things are well. And I heard back from him saying, like, if you got, says, I think I'm gonna have to come up, spend some time at your table, because he's got a ton of character ideas that he never gets a chance to play for.
Right.
So
that would be awesome, actually. And I mean, like you said, with your built-in idea with the fade or whatever, then James, as usual, can't make it every once in a while. It doesn't matter here as much. Exactly.
And I think that's if he's not able to start with the campaign where like I told him about what we had planned for Friday. If he's not able to do that, then or to make it, then we'll just what do you call it? He's just faded. He was, when you were freed or whatever, he faded and has not come back yet.
Right.
So then when he comes back, we will just be, you may need some catching up on what the hell's happening. But for whatever reason, the faded characters also, you tend to stay close to wherever the biggest group of you guys are traveling. Kind of like, what do you call it? Like differently charged atoms kind of pulling each other, right?
Oh, and maybe, this makes me think of so you were saying that maybe there's some connection between Brent's character and my character as far as the history of our dojos or whatever they're going to be called, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I was adventuring with someone who was killed from his order.
That I don't want to have it that expressive a connection. It's the fact that your symbols of your order are similar to his.
Okay. I was going to say, because that might be you could do something similar to that, where that's the trigger that his character showing up is what actually pulls me out, right?
Yeah, and that I'm absolutely fine with, but that's part of the mystery, right? There's a mystery I want to have for you guys. What Brent thought was that, or what his character thought, is that his order of monks were this ancient order of monks that protect elves from a specific type of thing. And there's this artifact that that order kept protected. And then he was off on his warrior pilgrimage or whatever, and he came back and found the whole tribe fucking dead, missing, and the thing gone as well too. And that's when his master told him that it's actually not just elves. It's an order that is bigger than just us. And that's where he doesn't know anything more about it. He doesn't have any hooks to follow or whatnot to. He's just trying to make ends meet as a mercenary, same as your character is right now. But there isn't one little clue you guys have, is that both of you speak a language that you both understand and is included in the carvings on your or on the script on your symbols of your order, but you don't know what that is yet.
Right.
So I want to give you guys, in addition to the sort of the plot and whatever else that I've got going, it ties into the campaign as well. Yeah, and I got to do some more reading on something as well too, because I might have another little element for you as well. I just need to like, the intent is we're going to play to 3 and we'll see where things are going. But I'm planning as if we're playing to 30. So
right.
The campaign will be, because I want to approach it the same way that I did our Iron Kingdoms campaign, which is just I'm going to have some long-term ideas of what's going to happen in things, and then you guys will respond to whatever comes up. But it'll ultimately be in your hands. So.
So wait, are we going to actually role play them finding my character, or are we just going to tell that as backstory?
I think we'll just tell that as backstory. Because I mean, like, it's part of you sitting, and like, it would be cool to role play that out. But I think I'd sooner sacrifice that for the sake of doing, because there is some other role playing stuff. Like, I want to do a little bit of for the first session. I would like to do some role playing to get you guys familiar with the world as well before we launch into
totally.
The actual adventures.
That's what. So the reason I asked is because, well, why don't you just write the story of why I'm there then?
Of why you were
at what's this place called? Overwatch?
Overlook?
Overlook?
Yep.
You can just write that into the backstory then.
Sure. Well, I think that what
like, I would make that up. Like, that's what I'm saying. If we were going to role play that scene out, then I would put some input into it so that it's like, well, why was your character there? And we can make something up. But if you're just going to throw that into the backstory, then it doesn't really matter to me.
No, that's all good. It's like, we're going to talk about the backstory. I'm not going to just shoot you an email with the backstory of why they came together. I want to do that in the first session. Because I want each of you guys to say, how I want to know how the other characters got together and what their links are and stuff like that. And then I'm picturing you have been with them for a bit now. It's just that, you guys are sort of living hand to mouth at this point.
Right.
I want you guys to be like an adventuring company or like an adventuring company or mercenary company at the start of the campaign. And we're going to talk through how that happened, but that what led you to being trapped in that place. And I'm going to put some thought in between now and next Friday to figure out what sort of what the nature of the what do you call it, of the trap was, or whatever. Like, do you want to have like that you were under attack and that's when you sort of like disappeared?
Yeah, like that. I mean, I'm not sure what I would have been doing there. Maybe I was just, like you said, it's sort of a safe place, maybe, potentially, for my character. I mean, depending on how far back you want to go, historically, like, this could be during, like, it could have been sparked by whatever caused the fall of the thing, or whatever is connected to this outside force thing that brings
what I think
storyline.
Is I think it's something more prosaic, like the planar instability of the region is just sort of a signature of that region. Like, it's something that anyone with arcane knowledge would probably know about the region. That magic just sometimes works weird in this region, and that would have dated back till certainly the time of the Narathi Empire, when your character was around. And I think what may have just happened is it may have been something as simple as, you tried to use one of your abilities that like, if you end up with an ability that teleported you, then you maybe used that, and then suddenly, you reappeared and found yourself in a completely different world. Right.
Or I was in a fight with some other magic user, and like the combination of our magic just did that to me, or anything.
No, it's actually it's something that's linked to the region, not because of some other thing. And I want to link it to your powers specifically.
Okay.
Okay,
also that I'm in danger of every time I teleport in the region of disappearing?
No, because like it's not, it's sort of a, you know, 1 in a million shot. As far as you can tell, what happened is you use this power at, like, well, at least this is what, if there's someone who's got training in Arcana in our group, this is what they've tried to piece together, is they think that you happen to use your power at a place where there was a planar instability and you somehow got trapped there for a certain length of time. And
like that, the problem I have with that is, like, if you told me that, you know, going down my stairs could pause me in time for 100 years, I would never go down my fucking stairs ever again.
Yeah. No, okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Even if it was really good shit in my basement, I would just leave it there forever.
No, that's fair. Okay, so then
that's why I wasn't trying to make it 1 in a million, but like just maybe something that was a little more erratic than just using specifically one of my powers, because my character would avoid it.
No, then I think what happened instead is I think that what happened is you found something. There was a stone of some kind that you know, like, because again, the place, even in the time of the Narathi Empire, this place is littered with ruins. You know, there are like remnants of old civilizations and whatever else, and I think that maybe you guys stumbled across where you were camping for the night, or near where you were camping. You found a certain, you know, a certain set of stones, and or maybe even just one, like a single remnant of what used to be a bunch of standing stones, and you felt a weird kind of pulse from it, and you touched it. And then the next thing you recall was returning to it at a different time of day, surrounded by strangers in a, you know, 150 years after when you disappeared.
Yeah, okay, I like that way better.
Okay, cool. Then and then also that is what the markings on the stone are similar but not identical to the markings on your what do you call it? On the symbol of your order.
Oh, so maybe that's why I went up to investigate it.
Yeah, you were like, oh, that's weird. And then in what I think in the course of traveling, the guys will have heard about, like, someone, you know, at an inn near this thing said, oh, you know, there's stones out by whatever else that have a similar, you know, appearance on them. So they went there, and then you reappeared. They were washed over with magical power, and James's character may have disappeared.
Right. Yeah. Depending on if he's going to make it or not. Cool.
Yeah, and there's probably like an initial bit of like, we're going to spend everything we can to try and, you know, rescue this guy, and then like a year passes, and you're like, look, we need to earn money. We don't know enough right now. We don't have the resources to keep doing this, and if we don't do our jobs, we're gonna go hungry. So you guys had to keep on working as, you know, caravan guards or whatever.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so that gives you your and I mean, James, if he does make it for the first session, then great. We'll you know, he'll not have disappeared, but that's the risk, I think, is that someone has faded. Like, there's been a lingering effect from this power. And you're right. The what do you call it? I like that much better than you having to worry about using your powers, though that may be a risk as well.
Right, and that's fine, but like, it's better that my character doesn't know that, because like I said, he would avoid using it.
Totally, no, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. Cool. Well, this is yeah, I'm loving the way this is coming together. This is going to be a great group of characters.
Yeah, it's exciting. Awesome. All right, well, good luck. You're moving this weekend, right?
Yeah, Friday night I moved. So I got the dog is unhappy with me because I tore the couch apart today.
Yeah.
So she's not happy with me right now. So she's hiding downstairs sulking.
Yeah, dogs, she'll probably be a little uncomfortable at the new place for a bit when you first move in.
Yeah, I think like the only good thing is that there's going to be more of our stuff there. Like, she's getting better. Like, when we go back to Winnipeg, she's usually she needs to do a quick sniff around and see where everything is.
Yeah.
Everything smells different there, and the place will smell different when we get there. But I mean, we also have a lot of the first things I'm going to be doing is setting up the couch, getting her cushions out so that she can have, comfortable stuff, getting her toys out, so that she's going to be used to it. And once the bed's together, like she sleeps on my bed anyway. So I think once she's familiar with that, I'm going to pick up my keys tomorrow. So what I might do is I might see if I can bring her as well and just let her see the place once before, I just suddenly bring her there and not back here.
Right, like before you're just, now we're here.
But I don't think she needs, to be honest. I don't know. It's not
I can understand why it's confusing for a dog, right? I mean, it's just like, we're here every day, or well, like, especially for a dog, like, she is at your house every day. Like, that is where she lives, right? And like, spends so much of her time there. And now it's like, hey, here's your new place where you live. And
I think it's going to be offset by the she's going to enjoy the backyard so much there. And there's
it's going to be a much better space for her.
Oh man, there's a big bay window in it, so she's gonna be able to have a view of the street, so she can bark like an idiot at people when they walk by. Like, she's gonna be a very happy puppy at the new place.
Well, good luck with you this weekend.
Yeah, thanks. So then I will. I'm gonna shoot an email, I think tonight, because I don't intend to do any more work tonight. I'm exhausted, and I'll go to bed early and get up. Go to bed early, get up early. But I'm gonna send an email to everyone to say what you've picked and sort of the character you're going. Okay. You know what, the other thing I realized from that Dead by Dawn thing too is I want to get like with our Iron Kingdoms game and with my other D&D games in the past and most of the games I've run, I regularly send out those kind of like hype emails, and the frequency with which I send them is directly related to how invested in the campaign I am.
Yeah.
Because it's just I can't, I want to be doing something with the game, but not when we're at the table. So that's my way of doing that. And I'm really looking forward to doing something similar with this game.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, cool. All right, what do you got planned for the long weekend anyway? You going away at all, or are you?
I don't really have many plans. I want to build this coffee table for basically right in front of where I'm sitting right now.
Yep.
And so I've bought some materials to make a model of it, and I'm probably going to work on that this weekend.
Oh, okay, cool. So, and then what? The people at your work are going to build it for you?
Yeah, I'll probably get it built partially at work and then build the rest myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I got to first make it work mechanically, so I need a model of it to make sure I can actually build it.
Nice. It's always a good plan.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, listen. Have a great long weekend. Thanks for spending a session. I think this character is gonna be really fucking interesting.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. And I'll talk to you soon. So,
okay.
Listening at home, thanks so much for joining us. If you did sit through the whole session, thanks for going through character creation with us. We will be back in a couple of weeks to finalize everyone's characters and then hopefully kick off the campaign. So we'll see you then.